I want to thank you for taking the time with me today. My name is Bryan Del Monte, and I am the president of the Aviation Agency. The purpose of today's presentation is to show you, as the leaders of aviation aerospace companies, how you can grow in any economy. I know right now there's a lot of anxiety as I'm talking to you today, because who knows when you might encounter this. As I'm talking to you today, it's the third week of August. There's been a tremendous amount of tumult in financial markets. There's a tremendous amount of tumult in the stock market. There's a lot of concern that the good times may be over. Right? Now, I am an economist. I don't know when the next recession is going to be. I have my own suspicions about it. But today, I want to talk to you about how to grow in any economy. And as business leaders, the economy, the GDP, recession, growth, all of that, there are always winners and losers in the economy, whether the economy is good, quote unquote good, growing, or quote unquote bad. Microsoft was started in a recession. Apple was started in a recession. Amazon was started in a recession. There are always winners and losers, regardless of what the macro economy is doing, good times or bad. So today's briefing is about how do you win that game, regardless of what the economy is doing. So let's get to it. Sales is the lifeblood of corporate growth. And I think we would all agree on that fact. Nothing happens till there's a sale. Sales activities really break down into two big buckets. There's lead generation and there's lead capture. And lead generation is about your at-bats and your calls and your inquiries and the pitches you make and how many pitches you get to make and your sales intensity numbers. And sales capture is about the deals you're winning and can you maintain prices and can you maintain profit margins and lifetime value and second money and all that good stuff. Now, let me begin by saying that all companies typically have a strength in one and not the other. If you were truly strong in both or truly weak in both, you wouldn't be watching this. Because companies that are really strong in both of these, they're too busy doing business to pay attention to anything other than taking orders. And companies that suck at both, well, they tend to go bankrupt. So, chances are, and what I'd like you to think about for a moment is which one are you strong in and which one are you weak in? And chances are you're probably stronger in capture than you are in lead generation. And that's part of why you're here. It's actually the main reason why you're here. Because you're like, well, I need to grow revenues. I don't know how to do that. My guess is you already kind of know lead generation isn't doing it for you. And that's okay. About 80% of businesses out there don't have really effective lead generation strategies. Why? Well, in the end, it really boils down to fear. And that fear makes it tough to sell because at a very deep level, if you're not sold on your own value and you're not sold on doing enough to make the connections, to create all the opportunities, and there's, selling is a kinetic activity, then you're not going to get well known enough to have lots and lots of people in your pipeline. So most companies struggle with lead gen. That's very, very typical. Over the next few weeks in these presentations that I'm going to do, these trainings, I'm going to go deep into both. So if capture is your issue, we're definitely going to talk about capture strategies and the things that go along with that. But, today we're really going to kind of focus on lead gen because that is where most people are. And it is really the core of how you win in any economy. You have to know how to attract people and convert them. Most businesses in aviation have reasonably good sales capture processes. They do need work, but the weakness for most is lead gen. So when everything is firing on all cylinders properly, when you've attracted that lead and closed the deal and everyone's all smiles and whatnot, three things fell into place. Now, there's a micro level that these things fall into place, and there's a macro level that these things fall into place. The difference between companies that grow no matter what and companies that are subject to the whims of the broader market really boils down to how well do they execute these three activities, domination, WIFM, and follow-up, on a macro level. Because when things are good, see, the opportunity cost of making a choice is much lower. And so you don't necessarily have to dominate your market. You can have imprecise communications and sales functions and really crappy follow-up, and people will still buy your product. And so, this is why winning is sometimes dangerous. You confuse, low opportunity costs with actual real sales effectiveness. The dominant companies, the companies that grow even when the economy gets tight, they are very laser focused on these three activities, which are dominating their markets, what's in it for me, or WIFM, and follow-up. Now, in subsequent seminars, I'm going to talk in much more detail about all three of these things, but I want to give you an overview because this is the secret sauce. If you were like, hey, what's the secret sauce to growing in any economy? This is the secret sauce. Getting very good at the macro level, which means every encounter with a prospect, everything you do in your company, every aspect of sales has these three elements ingrained and baked into every activity. Because every time you made a sale, these three things fell into place. You dominated the attention of the prospect. They had a deep empathetic connection to you in terms of the WIFM, and you probably did it subconsciously or, not aware of you were doing it. And then your follow-up or lack thereof didn't impede the sale, which actually it's usually the lack thereof. But this is it. This is the formula. You have to dominate your market. You have to speak and understand your market in a certain way, and you have to follow up. That's how you survive regardless of what the economy is doing. So let's talk about these three things for a few minutes because this is it. This is the core of the presentation. Domination, dominance. Let me assert something that's controversial. I don't mean it to be controversial, but it often winds up being controversial. And please feel free in the comments to comment about this. I'm happy to answer questions. My statement to you is this. Competition is for cowards. It's for the people who hope for growth, who hope for the best, but they're not committed to leading a market, and they're not committed to truly generating long-term growth. Now, what do I mean by that? It's not enough to be good at what you do. In today's business world, you must dominate. There's a very distinct difference between competition and domination. Competition is a struggle in pursuit of goals where multiple actors compete with one another and just the guy who's marginally better wins, right? Sports competitions decided by milliseconds. Fractionally better. Domination is where you influence and control everything around you. You make the market. The market doesn't make you. That's the difference. Now, there are companies that dominate. Coca-Cola, Apple, there are sports teams that dominate. The Chicago Bulls, the Dallas Cowboys, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Green Bay Packers, the New England Patriots. At various times in NFL history, right, those teams have been super dominant, okay? They controlled everything around them. Even now with the Patriots, the New England Patriots, just to focus for a second on sports, does anybody believe the Patriots won't have postseason play this year? It's 2019. Maybe I'm wrong, but my belief is they're going to be in the playoffs. Are they going to go to the Super Bowl? Well, the odds makers seem to think it's at least a reasonable bet. They're dominant. That's domination. that's being so secure in your position, you don't worry about what the other guy's doing, because everything is flowing to you almost faster than your ability to deal with it. But as I've pointed out, right, with all these companies, Coke and Google and Apple and the sports teams and whatnot, they're not dominant forever. Why? Because at some point they get lazy and they just start trying to keep up with everybody else. They slip into competition. Okay? Now, when I have this discussion, what some people will immediately point out is, well, that's just the fast mover advantage and people eventually catch up and whatnot. No, that's actually not what happens. Okay, and if you've heard about the first mover advantage, right, the idea is if you're the first entrance into a market space, you can capture significant market share while competitors scramble. And I'll give you a good example of where this falls flat. Netflix. Netflix put Blockbuster out of business. Netflix put a lot of people out of business. They were not the first to enter the market. They were not even the first to enter the idea of streaming. But they entered it in such a dominant way that they were the last mover to enter the market in that regard. And when you're the last mover, that you create the last great development for a specific market, which the idea of on-demand streaming, which was the natural outgrowth of getting the CDs, they made the last great development for the specific market, and so they enjoyed decades of profit as a result. Now, whether or not they can hold on to it's an interesting question, but they dominated and destroyed established businesses that had way more money than them. You have to dominate your market space. You have to dominate it, and then you have to scale up from there. And so everything you're doing, all the marketing you do, all the activities you do, how you prospect, how you talk, how you walk, your strategy, it all has to be looked through the lens of somebody's going to have to lead this industry, so it might as well be us. Okay? Strong companies focus their investments, including all the money they spend on marketing, communications, advertising, and everything else, on investments that help them dominate. Very quickly, really good example of this would be Amazon. Again, another company, we talk about disruptors, right? Disruptors have a certain mindset, which is we're going to dominate the industry. And Jeff Bezos, throughout most of the growth of Amazon, was all about taking the money that they've made and plowing it back into customer acquisition. He would set for managers targets as to how much they could spend per head, because he knew that if he became so dominant in the mind of consumers for what they were doing, everyone else would fall apart. And that's exactly what happened, right? They drove B. Dalton's essentially out of business, and they put Barnes & Noble on the ropes. And so, those were big competitors. And Amazon was a startup. Dominate your market. Quit spectating. Quit playing in it. Quit trying to be competitive. Make the decision to dominate. And great things will flow from it. Second issue, the WIFM, also known as what's in it for me. I'm sure you've all heard people don't want to buy the quarter-inch drill. They want to buy the quarter-inch hole, right? Or sometimes it's like people don't want to buy the drill. They want to buy the hole. Or they'll say, people buy the benefit, not the features. All of that is from a Harvard Business School professor by the name of Theodore Levitt, right? And I know we've all heard this before. Well, guess what? They don't even want to buy the whole. Your customers don't care about your products. Even the ones that buy from you don't care about the products. Okay? What they are buying is the solution that benefit creates. Okay? And I used to joke, how can I most easily demonstrate WIFM to you? I used to joke that I sleep with all my clients, which obviously is a provocative statement. What I meant, and what I would continue right after I had their attention, like I have yours, is I know what keeps them up at 2 a.m. I know what keeps them awake at night. To do that, you have to have a deep, empathetic understanding for what the real problem that your customers have and how your offering solves that problem. When you have that understanding, it completely changes how you sell, how you lead generate, how you capture. You will say things differently. You will give different messages in the marketplace, and people will come to you from unexpected and expected places. Great companies take the time to genuinely understand what's going on in their prospects' heads, and they speak to them in a way that grabs their attention, like tuning a radio dial, like I've been talking to you. It's, hey, how to grow in any economy. I know people are worried about recession. I didn't say, look, let me give you 12 tips in order to make more sales. That wouldn't be as bad, okay, because it's still the problem of how do I solve sales. But I get it. You guys that are listening to this, you're empathetic. You're like, okay, like if the economy goes bad, how am I going to continue to make things work? How am I going to continue to make payroll? I get all that. And so this series of articles that I'm going to have for you, this series of videos that I'm going to have for you, they are definitely what's in it for me. I'm going to show you the secret sauce of what it's going to take to survive. And it's up to you to decide. This is a proven method. It's what I use with clients. But it's up to you to decide if it makes sense. And so here it is. I'm presenting it to you. Okay? That's what's in it for you. Similarly, no one's buying an APU. No one's buying an avionics package. No one's buying a jet airplane. What they're buying is the problem that those tools solve, period. Okay? If you understand why you make sales and why you don't, you can grow in any economy. Okay? And like I said, in the case of companies that rise with the tide, okay, they understand these things at maybe best a subconscious level, but it's hit and miss in their execution. The ones they win, the whiffum's good. The ones they don't, the whiffum's not. And if you want to win every time, or you want to have a shot at winning every time, the whiffum's got to be nailed down every time. As one of my, mentors and people I look up to, Vince Lombardi, said, winning is not a sometimes thing, it's an all-the-time thing. Whiffum is not a sometimes thing, it's an all-the-time thing. And finally, we come to follow-up. Now, here's the interesting thing. 80% of all sales are made between the 5th and 12th contact. You want to know how many sales organizations actually have that level of follow-up? About 2%. Now, there's lots of reasons why sales teams don't follow up. Again, it largely boils down to fear. Okay? Without effective follow-up, you don't grow sales. Without effective follow-up, you don't nurture prospects. Without effective follow-up, you don't keep the business you work so hard to get. Nothing is more expensive than replacing a customer you had. Okay? So what's your follow-up on prospecting? What's your follow-up on lead generation? What's your follow-up on sales activities? What's your follow-up on post-sales activities? Most businesses are very, very weak in this area. And honestly, in good times, follow-up's not as important because the opportunity cost, again, is lower. So people aren't so intensely structured to be so resistive to making a decision. Whereas when things are bad, follow-up is like essential. If I had to choose one of these three things when the economy is really bad, follow-up is probably the thing you got to do more than anything else. Because if nothing else, you're still going to get more sales, even if you don't understand your market and you're just competitive. Okay? 73% of business-to-business prospects are not sales ready. And from that, 50% are not ready to buy in that first contact. So the only way to sell is through a system of follow-up. You have to build your credibility. You have to show and prove your commitment to your product and service. You have to be in front of the buyer. You have to keep pounding it away every day. That's what's required. This is it. Okay, if you can dominate these three activities, if you know these three things cold, if your sales team is cold, domination is going to allow you to generate leads like they're falling raindrops from the sky. With them and follow up are going to allow you to capture like it's nobody's business. But here's the thing, with them also really helps with lead generation because, like I said, it's like tuning a radio. If you're really on that person's frequency, doesn't really matter all the competitors and what they're saying, right? And I like to joke, there's always that rib joint that everybody goes to for 20, 30 miles around, regardless of what everybody else is doing. That's with them. That's lead generation. That's how WIFM leads to lead generation. Okay, follow-up's really more about capture than anything else, but domination and WIFM are all about lead gen. But you want good prices, you need domination. You want them to be happy and stay longer, that's WIFM. The degree to which you can internalize these habits at a macro level such that they are applied in every case is the difference between having to weather the storm and just hope for the best and growing regardless of what the economy does. Thank you for taking the time to be with me today. I hope this has had a meaningful impact on you. I've given you the tools. We're going to do more. I'm going to expand on these things. We're going to do a series of Friday talks, and I hope you'll continue to listen. Leave a comment below. Give me your feedback. Give me your questions. Happy to answer them. If you want, of course, reach out and call us. 612-800-0310 or call me directly, 612-254-2753. You can send me an email. It's BRYAN, Bravo, Romeo, Yankee, Alpha, November, at theaviationagency.com. Obviously, this website is the Aviation Agency. I'm Bryan Del Monte, and I want to thank you for joining us today. And please, comments, questions, leave them below. Happy to answer them. Have a great day.